Hello and welcome to today's European SharePoint Office 365 and Azure Community webinar. My name is Shane and I am delighted to be joined by Greg Strauss, who will be talking to you about business application from scratch in under 45 minutes. Challenge accepted. Remember to join in the conversation about today's webinar on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is ESPC17. After the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you have for Greg in the questions window. Some questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and you will be notified by email when it is available. And now I'm going to pass you over to our webinar presenter, Greg Strauss. Hello, Greg.
Okay, thank you, Shane. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to quickly verify that I'm indeed showing the screen that I want to show.
Yeah, I can see your want to be a superhero screen from WebCon.
All right, great. So, hello, my name is Greg Strauss, and today I wanted to show you how to make business applications from scratch in 45 minutes. So for those of you who have experience developing SharePoint-based business applications, you may have found that some of the obstacles you may encounter is the rather significant learning curve and barrier of entry and long development times unless you know what you're doing and you possess a very specific skill set. Also, if your business application needs to be constantly evolving and you need to make many changes frequently, you may be hindered by the deployment and redeployment mechanism. So today I'm going to show you that that doesn't have to always be the case. I'm going to challenge myself by creating such a business application which is made up of the three cornerstone pieces: the workflow, which is like the business logic behind it, the form for entering data, and a user dashboard, which is like a end user site for the end users. So in order for our business application to not be removed from context and for it to be kind of a little bit realistic, the scenario I'm going to be carrying out is a gift registration process. Let me just grab my pointy thing. All right, so the idea is as follows. A user will register a gift in this like at the very beginning. Then they will pass it over to their superior directly above them in the Active Directory structure, and then this manager will be able to decide whether to reject this registered gift, or if they approve it. And then the system will automatically decide. In this case, it will check the value. If the value is below 500 euro, then since the manager approved it, it will be approved directly. But if the value exceeds 500 euros, then we have an extra validation step called compliance approval, where compliance officers will validate this gift, and they can also either reject it or approve it. And of course, full disclosure, I work for WebCon, so I will be using WebCon BPS. Oops. Okay. Let me just find my mouse. All right, so I'm going to be using WebCon BPS Designer Studio, which is like the command center. Here I'll be designing the workflow and the form and also most of the site. So the first thing I do is create a new folder. Or you can use one of the existing ones. I'm just going to create a new one called Webinar. And once I have a folder, it's time to create a process. So this process is a gift approval. And once you have a new process, one of the first things you do is you go over to user privileges and give yourself admin privileges, because obviously since I'm going to be designing and testing this, I want to have full access to Designer Studio and all the bits and bobs and all the nuts and bolts. All right, so what is a process made up of? So the process is made up of a workflow. We'll get to our standard workflow in just a moment, and a form. And there's also some configuration settings like actions and whatnot beneath the hood. All right, so the first thing that we'll handle is the workflow. So what we need is the basic business logic behind our business application. And in this case, once the user starts the process, they will create a new I managed to do that. All right, so they will register this workflow instance, and then it will go over to a decision step, which will be handled by the manager, and the manager can then either reject it or accept it. So the registration step is just a start step for the users, and then we have two types of intermediate steps. So the first one is well, let me zoom out a little bit. All right, so the difference between like a normal intermediate step and an end step is as follows. On an intermediate step, somebody, a user, is assigned to some sort of task. They are assigned to this instance, and they have to complete something, they are responsible for the instance. And in an end step, there is no such requirement. A user does not have to be assigned to the workflow instance. So basically, it serves as a sort of archive or repository for workflow instances which are inactive. They are not part of the workflow currently. And just for organization purposes, there are two types of end steps. There is a positive and a negative. Basically, they are just for separating the workflow instances. Apart from that, there is no extra function. So okay. So in this case, our user registers they receive a business gift, and now they have to send it over to the manager. So let's connect this step to this intermediate step, and this will be the manager approval step. All right. And once the manager receives this workflow instance, they will then be able to either send it to the positive end step, or they will be able to reject it. So let's add the negative end step. And this one we'll call approved. Then the path. All right. I'm having a bit of delay here. Okay. Come on. All right. All right, so as I mentioned, once the workflow instance travels from the registration step to the manager approval step, somebody will have to be assigned to this step. When the user clicks register, this workflow instance will have to be assigned to the manager. And how do we do this? So in the path configuration, we have the tab called task creation, and this is used for assigning this workflow instance to somebody. And there are three main ways. There is a predefined method, which basically there are some predefined options based on the Active Directory, and the one which makes most sense for us is assigned to superior, because this way the registering user will be able to directly send this instance to the person that is directly above them in the Active Directory. And also for testing purposes, I am also going to assign myself, just so I don't have to switch users when I am demonstrating this workflow down the line. And there is also the third option, the dynamic option based on data entered into the form. All right, so let's save this. Okay, so we have the most basic business logic in place. So let's see if this works. Let's launch this workflow in SharePoint. Let's see if I'll have to enter my login credential. Luckily not. All right, so down on the left side, you have all the steps of the workflow. And as you can see, they are in a bit of a jumbled order, but we'll fix that in just a moment. The important thing right now is that this workflow instance is currently in the registration step. And so right now, the user is able to just click this one path here, which is the register button, and this will send it to the next step. So let's see if that works. Okay, and so now this workflow instance has traveled to the manager approval step, and as we defined in the workflow designer, there are two available paths, approve and reject. And so from the perspective of this manager, we can see that they indeed have access to these two paths, approve and reject. All right, so I'm just going to quickly switch these paths around. This is done very easily by simply moving this up in the table, save the process, and you simply hit refresh, and the order of the steps is changed. All right, so the business logic is here, but right now we desperately need a form because we have no information here, none of the relevant information for a gift registration process. So in order to be able to enter information, we need some form fields. Form fields in our scenario are defined per process under the process node. So let's try and add some form fields. In WebCon BPS, there are over 25 different types of form field. I'm just going to use the most basic ones. So the first one, the default one, is the single line of text. Is pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to add a single line of text form field and call it title. Then add another one. Then there is the bigger brother, the multiple lines of text, which stores more lines of text and can be formatted. This we'll call description. Now let's add a floating point number field, and this one we'll call total value. And now some choice fields. The first picker field that will go is the personal group. This field will allow us to select a user from the Active Directory, and we'll call this field registered by. Did I misspell that? Nope. Okay. And the last field for the script demonstration that I will use is another picker field called a date and time field. This will bring up a little calendar which will allow you to pick the date, and we'll call this registration date. All right, save this process for now. And now that we have defined the form fields, we have to define their behavior on various steps of the workflow. We do this in the standard form designer. I'll talk about this designer a little bit later, but for now, for the demonstration, let's go over to the field matrix. In this field matrix, across the top here, you will see all the steps that we have defined so far. So a registration step, two end steps, and the manager approval decision step. And down here on the left side, we have all our form fields that we have currently defined. And the idea in this field matrix is as follows, is that for every form field, on every step, you have these three checkboxes that define the form field's behavior on that specific step. So the first one, the blue one, makes a form field visible and editable. So a user is able to enter a value into it. And the green one is a read-only. Is the read-only option. Basically, if there is no value, then a user can enter no value, but if there is one, it will just be displayed, it will be grayed out, it cannot be edited. As the name implies, read-only. The last one is the required checkbox. When you select this checkbox, the form field will have a red asterisk next to it, and basically the idea is that a user will need to enter a value into it. The field will not be able to, the instance will not be able to progress into the next step unless there is a value entered into that field. So basically it will force the user to enter some sort of value, otherwise they'll get an error prompting them to enter a value into the required field. So for this very quick demonstration, let's just go with all the fields visible and editable on the registration step. And for the manager approval and for the archive steps, we can just go with read-only. Since in the end steps, you don't need to edit any form fields, and the manager is only there to make the decision to approve or reject. They don't have to enter anything themselves. All right, so let's save this process and launch this again. All right, so we have some input fields that have appeared on our form, but let's try and enhance them a little bit, because obviously this is not extremely user-friendly, and especially like these registered by and registration date. These fields are fields that can be filled out automatically, so the user doesn't have to manually slog through filling them out every time. So let's try and do that. Back in Designer Studio, if we go to the form field configuration, first we'll do registered by. So obviously this field can default to the user that is currently logged in. Since the user that is registering the gift will they'll have their name entered into this field, which just probably makes sense. All right, so in order to enter it, I'm just going to begin typing current user, and then either using the mouse or the arrow keys, I can go down to current user and hit enter. And then what this means is that this field, the default value of this field, will automatically be set to the user that is currently logged in to SharePoint. Something similar can be done for registration date, but this time I'll just go to current date, hit enter, and similarly, this field will be set by default to the current date. All right, next we can do the total value. The total value has some configuration options down here in the lower right. Basically, since we want this to make this a currency, so we can modify the number of decimal places. 2 is fine for a currency by default, and then we can show as amount and select one of the 2 formats. We'll just go with the one that's currently selected. And for a currency code, we can, for example, enter USD or Euro, hit OK, save the process, go back, SharePoint, refresh, and as you can see, the fields that we had some default values attached to them, they are automatically filled out, and then this field is formatted in a different way. Well, it just has the euro sign here. All right, let's enter some title. It's red. All right. And here, the manager will be able, and here the manager is able to see these fields as read-only. They cannot edit them, and they will be able to decide whether to approve or reject this request. All right, now let's go back to the form designer. Okay, so in WebCon BPS, the idea is that every single workflow has a standard global form template attached to it. Basically, this form template will be used across all steps of the workflow, and even though you can customize, you can make a custom form for each step if you need it. The general idea is to speed up the development time and to also make the forms feel familiar across different business applications in the same company. That we use this standard 4-panel setup. There is a top section, a bottom section, left and right. And the idea here that instead of setting these form fields and like setting their location pixel by pixel, you simply drag them around between these sections, and then they will appear in the corresponding section. So, for example, if we try to drag this registered by over to the right panel and the registration date as well, there we go. If we can save and then go over to SharePoint and hit refresh. Did I remember to save? Yes, I did. So these fields were now moved over, as they were scooted over to the right side, and that's in this way we can quickly design these forms, and instead of customizing them individually for every step. All right. So now that we have a very basic form and a very basic business logic for a very basic workflow, now let's try and make the workflow that I showed you at the very start. So basically, what we want now is after the manager approves of the registered gift, we want this workflow to be checked. The workflow instance to be checked if the value of the gift exceeds 500 euro. For this example, if it exceeds 500 euro, then it will be sent additionally to the compliance office, where the compliance officers will additionally verify the gift. So let's add that. For this, let's add this workflow control step. Now let's zoom this out, give us some space. Scoot this over, move this over here. All right, so the manager is able to reject the gift. Oops, there. Oh no, all right, never mind. Oops. Okay, so they are able to reject, but if they approve it, then this will go through this value check. let's just call it value check. Decision step. Well, where it will be automatically decided. The workflow will be checked if the value exceeds 500 euro, and if it is below, if it is below, okay, if it is below 500 euro, it will be auto approved. But if it is over 500, it will have to go through an additional intermediate step called compliance approval. Dropped it a bit too early over there. All right. And from here, the compliance officer, let's make this a little bit neater. All right, and from here, the compliance officer will be able to do exactly the same thing as the manager. They will be able to either reject or approve this workflow instance. And okay, let's quickly save. And as I mentioned before, this is another intermediate step, and again, we will need to assign somebody to this workflow instance. In this case, I've prepared a SharePoint group which compiles all the which is basically called compliance, and as the name implies, it basically just contains a number of users. I believe it's 3, which represent in this demonstration process. They represent the compliance office, and of course, as well, I'm also going to add myself for testing purposes. Right, let's save this. Straight away, since we're here, we can organize the steps, so we can move this compliance approval a bit up. All right, save. Oh, and one more thing, which I forgot to do. Since we've added a new step, we have to go over to the field matrix, and again, the compliance approval will be the same as the manager approval step, so it can only be read-only. And also one more thing we should remember, since we moved some form fields over to the right panel, their configuration, their field matrix configuration will now appear in the right panel tab, the corresponding tab. So again, this register by and register date step, let's make it also read-only. Save again. And let's see if this works. Let's start another workflow instance. All right, now let's try and enter some data. Let's maybe enter lots of pens, box of pens. And the idea here is that we're going to make this really expensive box of pens cost over 500 euro, so that it will go through the additional compliance approval step. So, okay, so I am the registering user right now. I register this. And this workflow instance is now the manager approval step. You can see it is assigned to me because that's because I set myself as the guy designing the process. I put myself in there. And then there is Michael, who is one step above me in the Active Directory. So he is theoretically my manager, and that is why he's assigned to it. And now I am the manager. Well, I am the guy deciding whether to approve or reject this gift. So I can approve it. And if I configure this correctly, 1 second, a bit of lag. One more time, all right. And, okay, I forgot to configure the most important thing. All right, never mind. So, okay, I knew I'd forget something, and of course I forgot the most important thing. Basically, to make this value check if the value of the gift is above 500 euro, of course. So let's configure this. This is the most important thing. So open this editor, and in order to create a conditional thingamabob which decides whether the value is above or below 500 euro, you can either drag these operators and variables. For example, in this case, we'll be using the total value of that is entered into the workflow instance, and we'll be using the if-then, if I can find it, there we go. and we can drag it over, or you can just begin typing, and similarly to the default values, they will automatically suggest some things which you can select with your mouse or the arrow keys. So in this case, if the total value field is greater than, nope, I messed up. Let's try this again. If the total value field is greater than, there we go, 500 euro, and if you want to change the operator, then you just right click, and so in this case it would make sense to make it, if the total value is greater or equal than 500 euro, then the path that we want to take is the to compliance path. So if a workflow instance passes through this control step and it notices that the total value, the value entered to the total value field is greater than 500, then it will go to compliance approval. Otherwise, the path that we take is the auto-approved path. All right. Okay, here. Okay, now that we have this bit done, let's see if it works. Let's start another workflow instance, and again, let's get a bigger box of pens. Let's make it worth 600 euro and register it. And I am the manager again, so I approve this. And I'm going to be really tilted if this doesn't work, but it did work. So this workflow instance is currently in the compliance approval step. And so again, I am assigned to it as the administrator. And then there are these three dudes that I've put into the compliance SharePoint group that are, well, they play the role of the compliance officers. And as you can see, the compliance approval guys, they have exactly the same view as the manager. They see all the workflow instances, the form fields in read-only mode, and then they can either approve or reject, but of course I forgot to name the paths. Let's quickly do that. Let's nudge this out of the way. All right, so in the compliance approval, they can either, I can name it like this. They can either approve or reject the gift. All right, so if I did it correctly this time, the path buttons should change names to reject and approve. Fair enough. So as the compliance approval, as a compliance officer, I can now approve this workflow instance. All right. So we've completed essentially the first two cornerstones of the challenge. I have a functioning form to show in SharePoint, and I have the basic business intelligence. And after a bit of trouble and forgetting things, it does work indeed. The user registers a gift, goes through manager approval, and then it's checked if it's over 500. And if it is, then it goes through an additional compliance step. So this makes sense. Now we need some sort of user dashboard, basically a site for end users where they can see a compilation of like workflow instances that they're assigned to. So for example, the manager will be able to see all workflow instances that are currently the manager approval step. Similarly, the guys that are part of the compliance SharePoint group will be able to see all the workflow instances that are in the compliance approval step. And to do this, simply from Designer Studio, we have this great button called Generate Process Site. Just call the gifts. All right, so let's put this away. Okay, so here are some of the main elements. The first section here is like the default web part. So, for example, the list of active tasks is just a counter for the number of tasks that are currently in the step you were assigned to. Sorry, it is that is the task amount. That is the counter. The list of active tasks is a list, a table of all the workflow instances you were assigned to. The process start is a button, like similar like I did directly from Designer Studio by right-clicking and starting a workflow instance. This is just a button on the site for starting a new workflow instance, and the documents are self-explanatory. Now, these things here are individual tables, which I talked about. For example, the manager approval will have a giant table which will compile all the workflow instances that are for them to approve, and similarly, the guys at compliance approval will have something similar, and then there will be two tables for the approval and rejected. But for now, let's ignore these, and also let's ignore the site with all grouped elements. The only thing that I'll leave here for this demonstration is an additional page which will have a giant big table which has all workflow instances regardless of which step they are in and who they're assigned to. Just as, you know, because as the guy that is testing this workflow, it makes sense to have something like this where I can see every single workflow instance that was registered for this process. All right, so now generate site. This might take a moment. By the way, if you have any questions, please submit them to Shane. I will try answer them after I'm done. And if I don't get around to some of them, what's like if so there are some questions which would be worth answering later on, then we'll answer them in like a blog post on our knowledge base or something. All right, so the site is generated. Let's open it up. And so here are these things that I talked about just a moment ago. Here is the button for starting a new workflow instance. This is just exactly the same thing as starting it from Designer Studio. It just launches a brand new workflow instance in the registration step. A task counter, which will count tasks, and here is the bread and butter, web part, which is basically a table which displays the workflow instances, and the workflow instances it displays are displayed according to how you defined. Like, for example, you can only display which are those instances which are in the manager approval step, or they're assigned to a specific person, or there are other filtering types. And there is also the all elements page, which I think will. Yes, so the all elements page also displays workflow instances which are in the end steps. So, okay, so there is a distinction between active workflow instances and inactive workflow instances. So basically, here on the main page, I only see the active ones. An active workflow instance is a workflow instance that is not currently residing in an end step. So basically, once a workflow instance lands in one of the two, end steps, either the positive one, so in this case the approved end step, or the negative one, the rejected end step, it is classified as inactive, and basically this is just an additional filtering option that you can omit, so that you can have a table for displaying all of them, and then for the manager, you can have only the ones that are active for him. All right, so let's try and add an additional web part down here, an additional show workflow elements web part, which displays all the elements, but we want it to display a specific set of columns, because as we can see here, instance number, step, and assigned to, these are not super useful information. So okay, first of all, let's start with the one that's already here. Let's edit the page. Let's hope the lag isn't too bad. Let's edit this web part. All right. This is the configuration screen for a Show Workflow Elements web part. As I mentioned just a while ago, it is the bread and butter web part. It is the most basic reporting web part, and it is, well, the most widely used probably in the system. And down here on the left side, you have the various filtering options. So, for example, in this case, we will only display the workflow instances of the gift approval process and all form types, all workflows, all steps. And here is where you define whether you want to display active tasks or inactive tasks or all tasks. Sorry, not inactive, all tasks. And the big one that I want to show you is data selection. So here there is a huge number of system steps that you can display as columns on this web part. And then there are also these form fields that we defined just a moment ago. So for example, it would make sense to also include the title and total value just for this demonstration. And we'll make this the second column and the third column. All right. Okay. Save and return. And so in a bit of a crude fashion, but we have additional information about these workflow instances. So it's not just a number and just not just a step, but we can actually see that we have this red ball and this total value. Now there is an interesting thing here. So as you can see, this workflow instance doesn't have a title and doesn't have a total value, which is a bit bad because obviously it would be wise to force the registering user to enter these values, especially the total value, since it's so crucial to how the workflow functions. Based on the value, on the total value, it will decide whether to send it to the compliance approval or directly approve it. So let's go back here. And let's go to the standard form and field matrix. And it would be wise to make the title field and the total value field required. So let's just see if this has the desired effect. If we start a new workflow instance now, you will notice that there is a red asterisk. And basically, if I'm a cheeky user and I try to register it now, I will get an error message saying that I need to enter some title and some total value. Basically, I am now blocked from registering this workflow instance until I fill out these fields. So let's create quickly another workflow instance. Sorry, I've lost my mouse. Okay, there it is. Let's make another box of pens because I'm not very original. And since we entered the required values, the title and the total, the title and the total value fields, since we filled them out, they are the workflow instance can progress to the next step, which is the manager approval step. And so, yeah, there it is. If we refresh this page, this new workflow instance appeared on this Show Workflow Elements web part. All right. So as I was attempting to do before, let's add another Show Workflow Elements web part below this one, and I'll make it the same as the one on the All Elements page, which basically displays all workflow instances. So how would I go around to doing this? Let's edit the page, add a web part. So yeah. So though we have the WebCon BPS web parts, and yeah, the workflow elements it is the bread and butter web part for our sites. Let's drag it down here. Oops. Please cooperate, Mr. Web part. There we go. Let's edit this web part quickly, and since we want it to have the same the same columns as the one above it, so let's copy configuration from the other one. Which one is this? This one. There we go. New page, my active tasks, copy So now we've copied the column setup from the other workflow elements web part, and the only thing that we want to change here is in the predefined filter we want it to display all tasks, regardless of who they are assigned to and which step they are currently located in. So let's say the return, and so this is exactly the same web part as the one on the all elements page, except it is added below here. All right. What's the time? Okay. So either so we've just come in at just under 40 minutes, and what we have is we have the three cornerstone pieces. So we have the workflow, the business logic, we have a form, and we have a user site, which and the user dashboard, and those were the things that I set out to do, and I think to an extent I succeeded. So all right, I think that's all I wanted to show you. All right. Nope. That's all right. So if you want to try WebCon BPS for free, I entice you to check it out at starter.webcon.com. Check it out. As I said, it's free, and give it a spin, see if you like it. Do we have questions?
Great. Thank you, Greg, for a great presentation. Yes, we have a few questions in, and if there's anybody else that wants to submit questions, please do so now. Question one, Greg, can all business applications be implemented using this solution?
Oh, yeah, yes, absolutely. So when you design a business application, the two main limiting factors, I think, is the scalability and the flexibility. So scalability is not an issue. You can go as big or as small as you want. The workflow that I created here is very basic. I mean, two intermediate steps, two end steps, one entry point. That is pretty much nothing. You can go to dozens of processes, dozens of interloping workflows. You can go as big as you want. The other thing is flexibility. So if you noticed, basically with WebCon BPS there is no deployment or redeployment time. What I did, I made a change, I saved it, I refreshed it, and it was there. It was visible, and so thanks to this, you can quickly iterate new versions, and which basically, if you have a business application which needs to be changed often, or for example, if the management doesn't like it, then obviously you can quickly create a new version. You can move it around, and you are not limited by the flexibility of this. So yeah, you can go as big as you want, as small as you want, and it can be as volatile. The application you're making can be as volatile as you want it. So basically, yes.
Okay, great. Next question: how long does it take to implement a business application?
Well, it depends on the scale. So as you saw, the most basic one was 40 minutes, and yeah, if you're going fast, you can have the most basic processes that the companies want. So you can have them out within hours. So yeah. So when people when clients want to check out WebCon BPS, the first processes they want are obviously the ones which are used by a lot of companies and the ones that we've done dozens of times. So you have your vacation registrations. The gift registration is actually another good example. We have a lunch workflow for ordering lunch. So yeah, so those are the ones that people want to start with, and then they build upon them. Did I get off track? No. So yeah. So the time to develop an app depends obviously on the scenario you're going with. But here is the other good thing. Apart from quickly iterating new versions, the other good thing is that from the first moment you have a prototype is also a lot shorter. So not only are you putting out new versions faster and faster and faster, but the first working business logic workflow that you can show to somebody for approval, instead of weeks or days, we're talking about hours. You can have the skeleton, the very bare bones. You can have it out and approved like yeah, sometimes even the same day. So yes, so the development time of an app in WebCon BPS is, well, extremely fast.
Okay. Next question, is the app on-prem or off?
Oh, it can be both. You can have it on premises and SharePoint online, like in the cloud.
Okay, cool. Next question is, how does it integrate with SharePoint or Office 365?
Well, so for SharePoint, we obviously use the SharePoint as like a as like the for the end users as a display, and for integration with Office. I can't recall off the top of my head, but on our knowledge base, there is definitely an article describing in detail how to integrate the login system with Office 365.
Okay, cool. They're coming in thick and fast here. So next question is sorry, did you just can it integrate with apps like ERP systems?
Yes, of course, and also I also didn't mention. I was going to mention for Office, we also have our own add-ins for both Word and Outlook. So, for example, you can start workflow instances directly from your Outlook. Like you get an email and using the Outlook add-in, you just start a workflow instance. So it's not only clicking the button, on the site.
Okay.
And ERP, of course, yeah. This is a big topic, but yeah, it's been done before.
That's great. Greg, thank you so much for your time today. There is more questions, and what we will do is we will answer them and maybe add them to the email when we send it around with the video later. How does that sound?
All right, that is fine. And I also forgot about one thing, because obviously I would forget something. If you are not sure yet if you're going to Internet Reloaded in Berlin this year, you can win a ticket by going to the display page, webcon.com/contact, and fill in the form there. You can enter, you can select the Internet Reloaded Berlin 2017 and enter quickly why you want to go, and I believe that the winner will be selected based on the most interesting or the most amusing reason why they want to go. So yeah, if you don't have your ticket yet and you are thinking, oh, maybe I will go, then definitely try and grab a free ticket from us.
Excellent, Greg. Greg, thank you so much for your time and for doing your first webinar with us today. Woo! Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm shaking. I turned up the heat in the room so that I don't shiver and that my voice doesn't break.
And the feedback has been tremendous. Everyone is saying great presentation and thank you so much. Greg, thank you so much again. We will talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, that's it for today, everybody. Just one sec here as I go back to my own screen. Okay, so join us again for our next webinar on Wednesday, April 5th, 2017 from 11 a.m. CEST to see a deep dive into performance optimization for SharePoint 2013 and Office 365 by Gökhan Özevsi. That's all for now. Thank you again to Greg Strauss for a wonderful webinar today, and thank you all for attending. Have a great day and goodbye.